yeah, as we kind of jump into it, I think there's a couple people jumping in. We'll go ahead and kick things off, I suppose. And as I was mentioning, as Matt was joining, Matt's been a Chili Pepper client I've worked with for, I don't know, since 2018, something like that. 2019. He's used Chili Pepper at Gainsight before moving over to Fullbay. Quick agenda for today, what Matt's going to talk to us about. It's some cool automations built within Salesforce that expands on our ability to manage no-shows and the round robin fairness. And then also he's got a very unique custom loading animation with his website that all the ones I've seen, people do custom loading animations for. It's my favorite one. It's pretty cute if you want to call it that, but I think it's pretty adorable. So also talks about where the APIs work, and basically he built this kind of before the MCP days. So talking about like the past and the future with that. And then just to summarize, Matt also has helped us with the case study that I can link to as well if you guys are interested in how Matt uses Chili Piper and some of the stuff he's done with Chili Piper in the past as well. And then we also have published these webinars that we've been having on YouTube. So if you missed one or you want to go, the last 2 weeks ago, we had Zillow on, and it was a really interesting use case of some apps that they built around the APIs. You can reference those as well on our YouTube page. So that we'll have those in the future if you want to catch up on them or learn something new. So with that, I will stop my share. And also we have a change log. If you want to keep up with the new things with our APIs or the new features, there's a lot of unique stuff that's coming out recently that you'll appreciate as an admin. So keep an eye on the change log here as well for new features. Without further ado, Matt, why don't you show us what you've done?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Gaines. So just to start, I mean, again, like Gaines said, I've been using Chili Piper since about 2018, something like that. It's crazy how long. Previously with Gainsight, and still, strong power users of everything that you guys have offer. You can see on our homepage, we've got, the Chili Chat down there. We use it for all of our booking routing. We use it for SDR distribution with distro. Excited to start playing with the MCP more and more for sure. And just to give a little bit of context again on our business. So we are a vertical SaaS product, shop management software for commercial repair shops. So, Chili Piper was a no-brainer for us because we work with this blue-collar audience, typically more SMB focused. So these folks do not live by their calendar typically I do, or probably most of the people on this call do. And so we had this massive drop-off on our demo requests where people would raise their hand and then we would never be able to get a hold of them. And so literally the first thing that I did when I joined Fullbay about 6.5 years ago was identified that we had this massive attrition. And I said, well, let's go get Chili Piper. And it instantly helped with that quite a bit by just giving people the option of booking or calling somebody right away. And so, it's been a great success story ever since. But one of the things that we did run to right away was this sort of issue that it was kind of an ingrained process within the business where our reps would essentially get credited back for a disqualified lead. So that means is if they got a lead, they called out to it and it turned out to be bad. It was spam. It wasn't a good fit, whatever. They would disqualify it. And they were supposed to go back basically to the front of the line. And so this posed a real challenge because while Chili Piper had sort of the native calibration settings for when people didn't show up or canceled meetings, stuff like that, it didn't have anything that you could sort of adjust that dynamically for other reasons. And so what we wound up doing was, as Gaines mentioned, built this tool via the API. I have a short little video that kind of summarizes how it's done in the Fire workspace today. And a 30-minute video of how it was done originally. I'm not going to subject you all to that, but kind of run through it a little bit. But essentially, it's leveraging the API, and then within our CRM, which is Salesforce, a webhook out of Salesforce to hit some custom code and adjust the API on the fly. So and I can share all this with everybody if they'd like it. But the initial or the essential idea here is when something is disqualified in Salesforce, it picks up the distribution ID that the lead came from Chili Piper, and then it hits the API and it adjust the level on the fly. So, and you can change that to any kind of trigger that you want, whether it's a disqualification or some other reason that you want to adjust that on the fly. But I will share, let me make sure I'm sharing my sound on this, and I'll play this here.
Here's a quick demo of the new adjust calibration script, now configured with the updated Chili Pepper Fire environment. This pretty much follows Gaines's outline to a T. Just figured I'd walk you through it a little bit and show you how it works. So this is the distribution that we'll be using here. You can see current levels of these two folks are at 1. This is going to be our lead that we're using. You can see we have a CP distribution field in here. And in the router here that we're going to be testing with, we have 2 update field steps in here where we are just hard coding in this distribution ID when this router is completed. So on the back end here, I have a flow that when this distribution field is updated, it triggers the script that will send the calibration adjustment. So that's the part that's like configurable. You would adjust the flow to only trigger it based off of a different event, but I have it just for testing purposes, just when something gets plugged in here. And then obviously you can manually adjust what that calibration looks like. I also have it just set to do a -1 value for now, but again, you could adjust that if you want to. So let's just go ahead and create the meeting here with this test lead. Just refresh this. Let's give it a second. It hasn't gone through yet. Still not there yet. There we go. All right. So that has come through. So that has triggered the flow in the background. Let's go ahead and refresh our distribution here. So you can see it has updated it to -1. So it's made that change there. And then the other adjustment here, or other additional thing that I did here. So in the past, with my previous script, the webhook was actually hitting Zapier, and then it was continuing the process. Part of the reason was it was kind of creating a log file in a Google Sheet of each time this is run and the result of it. What I did this time was I just cut the Zapier bit out, but I do have it writing to a text file next to the script. So if I refresh this real quick, you can see it's this adjust calibration -fire. If I look at this, I can see up here the date and time that it ran. I can see the user email, what the calibration was, what the distribution ID was, and then this is the message that the script is outputting. So if it's successful, it'll say great success. If it failed at some point, there's some error handling built into it that will give you that insight into it. So if it does have an issue, you at least know about it. Then I can share the script with you guys, but I've mentioned already that it is considerably shorter than the original adjust calibration, which is nice. The original one is about 300 plus lines long, mostly because it had to do some work around if it was an unbooked meeting, then it had to go delete prospect history and all that kind of stuff. Obviously now you guys have it nice clean where everything's just distributions, whether it's booked or not. So it can just kind of use that same process here and just basically make a couple of API calls where first it finds the user ID and then it goes and adjusts the calibration. And that's it. So let me know if you guys want this stuff. Happy to share it.
All right. So that is essentially how that process works in a nutshell. So again, really it's whether I'm not familiar with HubSpot as a CRM. I know probably a lot of folks are using that also, but I'm sure it's got a similar functionality to do some sort of like an outbound webhook or something like that based on whatever trigger event that you want. But really then you just have to host this PHP script somewhere and hit it with the webhook. And then as long as you are kind of set up with capturing that distribution ID, you can adjust the calibration on the fly, like it's doing here. So something that was really, really helpful for us to be able to figure out, because again, the sort of process on our side was very manual, and it was a complete kind of mess. I want to use an expletive there, but when I think back to what kind of process we had before this, so the fact that we were able to do this with the API, and then the fact that it got so much more streamlined with the Fire setup here was super helpful. And again, I'll make sure that Gaines has like the most updated version of all this stuff, and he can share it out, and you guys can use it or adapt it as you see fit.
One thing I'll call out, I remember from the configuration that we did, that was the important piece from the Chili Piper application setup side, was that at the end of a concierge flow or a node, there's an update field, data field or value. I don't know if we showed that in the video, but yes, at the end, you see it's got the update field. That's effectively saying, hey, take the distribution ID and set it to the record in Salesforce. And then that allows us to know which distribution you credit it back. So I think that's like, if you're going to configure this, that's like the one piece you got to do in Chili Piper is map those into Salesforce so that you can then process, and, which is pretty cool.
Yep. Yeah. And so in my example, the update was triggering upon this field just simply being populated. But in a real environment, the way that we do it in reality is this gets populated regardless, but nothing triggers off of this. But it's still, when the triggering event occurs, it pulls from this field to push that into the script.
So I guess where I was going with you built this manually back in the day. Now with you think how much shorter time to do this these days as it would have been, I don't know, 2022 or whatever when you built this. I mean, just if you had to go back and you had the tools you have now and that basically everybody has now, would you foresee this be some? Yeah.
No, I mean, like, it'd probably take 20 minutes with Claude or something like that.
Yep.
If that.
So the application I see here, so like, of course, you update a field in Salesforce on the lead to disqualified, and that triggers the webhook. But there could be other ways that people could utilize the same general logic that I think is interesting, because we've had a lot of people ask for things like, hey, I want to do my round robin weights based off of the sales users' achievement of their target quota. And then so like your best sales reps who achieve quota get a higher proportion of the leads. Or maybe SDRs book the meetings with the AEs, and the AEs have to go through some qualification process. And maybe if they deem it unqualified, then that kicks off a process that fires off the API. So yours is one method in which you're having allowing the rep to do it. Maybe you want to allow a manager to approve it. But the pipes that you put in place, I think, are unique and not heavily done from what I've seen with Chili Piper clients to be able to do this. So I think it's a very real use case that people want to be able to do. And I think it's really awesome that you've set it up to be able to do that and made it feed in between the systems like you've done. So nice work.
No, I mean, a plug for you guys here where it's like, this is one of those things that like I knew the request and like sort of our specific use case here was a little abnormal. Like, I mean, if you can't tell, like I, as a marketing guy, I hated that we were giving credit back for like disqualified leads. But that's just me. And so I don't expect every tool out there to be able to like accommodate these sort of needs. But the fact that you guys have, the APIs and the documentation to allow us to go build to that, I mean, that's huge. I mean, that's one of the differentiators that I see for you guys from the others out there, is just the extensibility to, hey, we have this custom use case, we can go build it. And then Gaines, you helping me figure out how to do that is huge. Yeah, I was going to switch gears here to the preloader example. That works. But this one, as Gaines mentioned, this came straight from the Chili Piper team. We just sort of modified it a little bit. But as anybody that knows with Chili Piper, there is like a little bit of a delay in between that form being submitted and you actually get in the booking page. And in our case, we actually take you to a thank you page. So there's even a little bit more of a gap there, where, again, talking about our audience, not unique. We're not special snowflakes or anything like that. But I mean, we do have an audience that, they're not used to filling out forms all day long like I might be. So, even if it's a second or two, I mean, they might push that button and assume they're done and bail out. We wanted to optimize how many people we can get actually booking through Chili Pipers. So when we saw the sort of preloader example, we wanted to go and leverage that and customize a little bit to be more on brand. So this is just an example of when you fill out our form, it brings this up. So to Gaines' point, it's a cute little truck here. It's pulling in my name from the form, what I put into the form. And then it's just playing that animation, and it's waiting in the background for the JavaScript event to tell me that the Chili Piper window has been fully loaded. And then it closes the preloader and it takes you straight to that page, or excuse me, to that part of the page. So it's a little bit more seamless there, where you're kind of constantly being told what's going on, as opposed to just sort of this like, waiting a second or two for this to happen. And, then you can kind of move on from there.
I do want to tell a fun story about Matt too. He also uses the live call, or the sales reps use the live call functionality heavily at Fullbay, where someone basically fills out the form, and sometimes they do auto dial where they start to call the reps, and other times they allow people to choose between. I think he's actually set up an AI phone bot that'll answer the call and do stuff with it. I don't know if we have time to talk about that. But at one point, Chili Pepper was considering sunsetting the live call functionality. And one of the reasons we decided not to do that is Matt's sales reps told us they were going to go on a hunger strike if we sunset that product. So we decided to save them the hunger strike and revive the product.
I remember the protest. Yeah. Thank you, Matt. And of course, thanks for being a loyal customer all this time. Much appreciated.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you.